Well, to say that 2019 was a strange year for Carlton would really be underselling that statement. Their season was really broken up into two halves, and you could be mistaken for thinking that they were completely different teams in each of those halves. So today it's my task to break down their year and end up with an overall score that judges their year. So, without further ado, my name is Ryan, and this is a Carlton Blues 2019 season review. So before we break down their year, we need to have a look at how they finished 2018 and what the expectations were leading into this year. 2018 was, by any stretch of the means, a pretty poor season. 2 wins across any campaign is a pretty hard slog, but when you add their percentage of only 59.3%, it really tells a team that struggled throughout the course of the year. Their average losing margin was an astounding 49 points per game, and when combined with an average score of only 61 points per game, well, to be kind, the Blues had a pretty poor year. With that in mind, and after a pretty horrible year, it's fair to say that there's no real way to go but up for 2019. At least, that's what we thought. Outside of a select special few, most had the Blues still in the bottom 4 and winning about 4 games for the year. Still, an improvement. What came at the start of the year though was really very puzzling. For the first 6 rounds of 2019, Carlton were perhaps the hardest team to figure out. Round 1 showed promising signs. The young Blues were blown out of the water in the first quarter, conceding the first 6 goals of the competition. Surely, this is the same old Carlton then. The next half of football would defy this statement, as they would go on to kick the next 8 of 13 goals and draw within a 13-point margin at the opening of the 4th term. It was very clear to see that the Carlton of old were gone. The Blues would, of course, go on to lose that game, kicking only 1 more goal for the game and going down to the tune of 33 points. But still, it was far more admirable than any game they played through the year before. This trend continued for the next 3 matches, being within the game late in the 4th term, sometimes even being in front, and then just fading in the dying minutes. It left fans scratching their heads, as the Blues had started the year 0-4, but were clearly a much better side. Still, competitive losses can only take you so far, and the Blues were desperate for a win. Round 5, 2019, will be the game that the AFL will remember fondly in years to come. After half a decade of mediocre football and almost 3 years without kicking a score of over 100 points, Carlton finally had their first win in 2019, broke the 100 barrier, and established the best first-year player the competition has arguably ever seen. Sam Walsh, the very player to kick the last goal to break the 100-point barrier. Finally, fans felt justified in sticking with the club through the tough times, and could justify the competitive losses at the start of the season. Surely... Oh. It's that side. Surely the season wouldn't be so difficult from here, right? Well, the trend of being in games late, only to fade out in the dying minutes, returned the following week against the Hawks in round 6. Only this was a harder loss for the Blues. With a game-high lead of 36 points midway through the second term, Carlton fell apart. The Hawks would take the lead, and despite a brief fight back by the Blues, in which they regained the lead again, the disciplined structures of Hawthorn got them over the line to the tune of 5 points, and the loss would go on to cause a chain of events that would change the club in weeks to come. After so many close defeats, Carlton's system fell apart, and their game plan was being exposed. In the following weeks, the Blues would lose by a big margin, and then they would fade out late in the game, and alternate this pattern until finally, in round 11, Carlton would only go on to score 33 points against arch rivals Essendon. After 11 games, the Blues were sitting 1 win and 10 losses. They had a percentage of only 74.3%. The media was crying out for blood. In the following days, their head coach Brendan Bolton, who'd been at the club for about 3 years, was sacked. Effective immediately. Unfortunately for Bolton, he was a very, very likeable guy, and every fan of the AFL liked the bloke. He was just not a very good head coach. So round 12, and up against the Brisbane Lions, the new interim coach David Teague, beyond any reason, quickly turned the club around and managed to secure a win, their second win for the year. With players now playing with a bit more freedom and having a more balanced field structure, Teague managed to orchestrate a comeback from 36 points down roughly midway through the second term, a contrasting reflection compared to the Hawthorn game in round 6. Carlton and David Teague had made a statement with this game. They were a threat to any team. Their next 4 matches would be decided by a combined 19 points. And more importantly, end with 2 wins and 2 losses, bringing their season total to 4 wins, 12 losses, and a percentage of 83.1%. They had, in only a matter of a few weeks, reached the expectations that fans had set on the club in the preseason. Impressively, Carlton would actually go on to win 3 games in a row, from round 17 to 19, beating the likes of Sydney in Sydney, Gold Coast, and Adelaide. This was the teams that fans had expected at the start of the year. And despite having to wait for another half year, it was great to see this once great club up and about again. The last 4 games were perhaps the most daunting of any team in the competition, needing to play 3 matches against potential top 4 candidates. And, well, as was expected, they lost those 3 matches. However, the second last game of the year was perhaps their most positive. August 15th, 2 days before round 22, coming up against St Kilda, Carlton Football Club announced David Teague as their official head coach, heading into 2020. He had clearly performed in outstanding circumstances and had completely changed the club around from when he took the helm at the midway point. The style of play that the Blues were playing with completely eclipsed anything that they showed in the first 11 rounds, and fans showed their appreciation by turning up to the St Kilda game, an effective dead rubber match to the tune of 51,000 people. Carlton would finish the year with 7 wins, 15 losses, and 84.5%. It was a completely different team compared to the first half of the year. The standout players are unquestionably Patrick Cripps, who at the time of recording this is fancied to win the Brownlow, and Sam Walsh, whom, as I said before, is possibly the best first-year player the competition has arguably ever seen. There have, of course, been other good players for them, but much like the team, they were fairly inconsistent at the start of the year. Charlie Curnow was clearly hampered by an injury. Brother Ed Curnow was being played in the forward line despite the midfield screaming out for experience. And Mitch McGovern was inexcusably out of shape and repeatedly went missing in games. I could name more, but I think I've illustrated my point. Of course, this changed in the back half of the year once Charlie was on top of his injuries, until his season ended due to some injuries. Ed was moved back into the middle, and McGovern was dropped to undergo a 5-week grueling training session and has come back since to be their dominant forward. So, what did David Teague do that Brendan Bolton couldn't? To be honest, the answer is actually quite simple. Brendan Bolton wasn't a great head coach. Throughout the start of the year, he was frustratingly playing players out of their preferred and most dominant positions, playing their tall forwards further up the ground and having small forwards play deeper and having them as a lead-up target, which was never going to work out on the rebound footy. They had several midfielders playing in the forward line as opposed to their midfield dominant position, and were then unable to play in the forward line as effectively as some others may have. Their game plan was slow and didn't use the skills of their players to great effect. It was a plan that was always doomed to fail. So what did David Teague change then? Well, he played their tall forwards deep. He moved Ed Curnow back into the middle, as well as giving Michael Gibbons more opportunity in the middle. And he obviously made some hard decisions on players as well. Case in point, Mitch McGovern. So the question is left to be answered. How was their 2019 campaign? Could you see it as a wasted year given their start? Was it ultimately positive because of the back end of the year? I prefer to look at it as Carlton finally emerging from mediocrity. For too long, this club has been a percentage booster for other teams, and it got to the point where the media didn't really care about it either, as it had just become a part of footy culture. The back half of the year, though, feels like change, and the AFL would be much better off with a successful Blues team. Going in, I was one of those select special few that thought the Blues would go on to win 8 games. So for me personally, they really finished the year where I expected them to be. However, they far exceeded most others' expectations and showed clear signs of improvement even within those first 6 rounds. It should be noted though that they sacked their head coach halfway through the year. And they really were the worst club in the league at that time. Which brings to question how the football department was able to function so poorly in the first place. Overall though, I'm giving the Carlton Blues a 6 out of 10. Their back half of the year, consisting of a 6-5 record, was unequivocally better than their first half. However, the first half cannot be forgotten when talking about an entire year's rating. Do you agree with my rating and overall review on Carlton's 2019 season? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Or, alternatively, you can join our Discord and let me know there. The link's in the description down below. Thank you for watching the video, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.